What is Project 2025? It is everyone here. This is the movement. We are going to be prepared day one, January 2025, to hit the ground running as conservatives to really help the next president. Heritage got on the marker as an organization by delivering the first mandate for leadership in 1980 to President-elect Reagan. We also, over time, gave a lot of resumes in, but when Dr. Roberts came aboard, he said, this task in 2024 is too big for any one think tank. This has to be a movement. And what we've done is use our convening power here at Heritage to bring the entire movement together. So 2025 is not a Heritage thing, it's a conservative movement thing. We're gonna explain briefly here, we're gonna have a panel and we'll have a video, but what we're doing is systematically preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state. So if you would, join me in watching the video and inviting our fellow panelists here, Ed, Rick, and Ken Cuccinelli over, so we'll cue the video and have a little discussion. What is Project 2025? It's a call for you to come work here, Washington, D.C.
Conservatives face a tough challenge in Washington, the swamp. The left has built a system that blocks and sabotages our efforts to run our government and deliver a conservative agenda.
People would come into the government on behalf of a president and not be bought into the agenda that he was elected to do. They were either uncommitted or incompetent.
Things aren't going to change unless you commit to serving our country.
We want to make sure that the plans that are in place have been vetted so that the person knows not only what argument and excuses come in their way, but what the answer is, and have the trust of a movement-wide effort led by the Heritage Foundation to make sure that they know that it's credible and it's conservative.
This time, we have a secret weapon. This time, we have Project 2025. By learning from the experience of former conservative appointees, we can overcome common obstacles and get things done.
The reason I got involved is because I wanted to be part of a movement-led effort, and Heritage Foundation has used their influence to be able to convene the movement.
We can be ready to hit the ground running on day one of the next administration. In the wise words of Morton Blackwell, you owe it to your philosophy to study how to win. Project 2025 will ensure a conservative agenda is ready to roll on day number one.
Make sure that we, as conservatives, are prepared to hit the ground running January 20th, 2025. To learn more, go to project2025.org. Great. Well, let me explain briefly how we've structured Project. Thank you. Let me give you a little overview how we've structured this, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Rick Dearborn to give you a little bit overview from his viewpoint as Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House and running the last transition. We have 4 pillars we speak of, and this is an integrated approach. First, as you know, today we came out with our policy book, Mandate for Leadership. This sets the table for what conservatives want in their next standard bearer. We are bringing this out before the primaries to bring the candidates to our point of view. And we're standing at the ready to train them up and give them policy expertise. But this is a great sampling across our 50-plus member coalition of what conservatives in the main want to see in the next 4 years. 2, we're making a massive database conjoining all of our personnel recommendations into essentially a conservative LinkedIn. This is for anyone in America to enter into government here in Washington. This place is only going to change when we take people in from outside of the Beltway. Anyone who's listening to this, who's ever aspired to come serve, this is your call to do it now. Join the database, create your profile, and then 2, we shift into pillar 3. It's our online training. It's going to teach you the rules of the road. How do you function in government? How does government function? We're going to teach you the more mundane things about how to get a security clearance, but we're going to tell you how to work effectively with a career staff, how to the budget processing work, the budget process works and all these other intricacies of federal government life that you can't learn on the job. And then finally, we're going to be doing the playbook. This is our plan of action for the first 180 days. We're doing transition teams. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience on the last transition and how this project will make it different?
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. So, Rick Dearborn, I'm the former Deputy Chief of Staff for President Trump in the White House. But before that, and right after he won election in 2016, 3 days later, I was tapped to be the Executive Director of a presidential transition. I think James Baker is the only person that's been on a transition 5 times. I think he ran one 3 times. Normally, when you do it, it's your first time doing it. I love doing it. I don't know that I want to do it again, but the peaceful transition of power is an awesome responsibility. I would have given my right arm to have had the book that I see on so many tables out there, to have this mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. I would have been able to go to our agency action team and put the book down and say, hey, here's what you should take a look at when you're going to build out how to run EPA or the Department of Justice or DOD. The 4th pillar that you talked about, Paul, the idea that there's a battle plan, plans, executive orders, how do you write those? What rules are important? What should you focus on? What can you anticipate that Congress may want to reverse or advance? What should your priorities be for the administration? You know, all of that will be part of this project that we provide the next conservative president. So I'm ecstatic about it. I wish I'd had at least this first piece, the book, and I'm happy actually to turn it over to a Deputy Secretary at Homeland Security and former Virginia Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli, to tell you a little bit more about what is in this book and how important it is.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I did serve in the Department of Homeland Security, and that's the chapter that the title in the book is lead author, but the reality is in DHS, and you'll hear this from other chapter leads as well, over 30 people contributed to writing this chapter. It covers the entire waterfront of the department, which is 250,000 employees, over $50 billion budget. There's a lot of ground covered under the banner of the Department of Homeland Security. And so some of the names you'll know: Mark Morgan, Tom Homan, Joe Edlow, who followed me in USCIS. Some of the others you wouldn't recognize, some from the legislative perspective, because some of what we look to do here is lead the way and have urge a president to lead the way in changing the law, not just issuing executive orders, but permanent changes to how American government works to better serve the American national interest and the American people. And all of those inputs are incorporated. We don't agree on everything all the time. You may have noticed that here or there in the conservative movement, but we reflect alternative options, and DHS is a good example of this. We start out with a primary recommendation, which may surprise some of you, and that is to get rid of the Department of Homeland Security. Well, maybe it doesn't surprise that many of you. But we also play the probabilities. Before I went to the dark side and went to law school, I was an engineer. I try to stay in touch with the numbers. And we think the odds of that, I don't want to bet on them, but we also worked, well, what if it doesn't get broken down? And by that, we don't mean get rid of the missions. We mean better manage from a national standpoint how American security is protected, how American responsiveness is protected. You think of FEMA, for instance. And we go through them agency by agency as well, including some of the things we think we should be rid of, like the TSA. It isn't that there shouldn't be security, but government doesn't need to run that, just by way of example. And that's not new to the conservative movement, but I think it is new to a lot of America. And we lay out the groundwork for how an incoming team, as you heard Rick describe, could begin executing on that goal on day one. And so, like many of the other chapters, lots of people involved in writing the Department of Homeland Security chapter. Very proud of that work product. And I think that when you add in the personnel piece and the training, you're going to hear about more from Ed, Pillars 2 and 3. This really would tee up an incoming administration to achieve more than we've ever seen under a conservative president before, which is exactly what we want to tee up the next conservative president to do. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan. I guess I should have mentioned I'm at Center for Renewing America these days, which is set up by Russ Vought, who you saw in this video here. He's former OMB. Obviously, I was at DHS. And that's kind of where I hang my think tank hat. And I can attest to to use Ed's word from earlier today, the ecumenical nature across the conservative movement of this whole effort. And that only makes it stronger. It really does. It's a very powerful way to see a bunch of individualists and organizations that value individual liberty set aside their own interests to work just purely on behalf of good conservative policy has produced a really outstanding product. And I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan.
So I'm Ed Corrigan. I'm the president of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Really proud to be a part of this project. So many of you are focused rightly every 2 years on electing the right people, and so much of your time and energy and resources are put toward that effort. But so often we ignore what happens the day after you win. And that's what this project is all about, because that's so, particularly with the presidency, it's so important. And basically you're going to get a chance to flip through the policy recommendations, having all of that. Rick and I were up in Trump Tower in the winter of 2016 I was working on the personnel project. Rick was running the whole operation. It's just so important. Getting the right people, and that's what that we've been focused on. Is the personnel database is going to be robust. It's going to provide strong recommendations, and in addition, we're going to have elaborate training programs for folks who want to come in and want to serve, and giving them the recommendations, the toolkit, and how to navigate it, and from people who have done it before and have been successful at it. So I just want to say, as Ken, you're going to hear a lot of folks say, it would be, for the most powerful think tank in America, it would be very easy to go it alone on a project like this. That's not what happened here. Under the leadership of Kevin Roberts and Paul Dans and Spencer and Steve Groves and others, this has been really a team effort. You got 50 different conservative organizations have contributed to this. That's what makes this a strong product. No presidential campaign or president is going to be able to ignore it. This is going to give them the tools to really be successful. And so really grateful and proud of the team for what they've done on this.
Yes, and thank you, Ed, for that remark. I would say, this has never happened in our movement. We've never had this coming together of the entire movement to prepare for one event, day one, January 20th. And what brings all these organizations together? Our common theme is to take down the administrative state, the bureaucracy, and you're going to, it's not as easy done as it is said. The bottom line is that we need to have an army of conservatives ready to march in day one. And they don't even know who they are yet. They're hoping that we're going to get the word of Project 2025. They're going to come from all 50 states and come here to Washington. And they're going to be equipped because of how we're training them and giving them the battle plans.